Hey everyone, my name is Tara Lynn and I am a teaching artist, and I've been a dot mandala artist for many years, and I'm excited to paint the pastel pinwheel with you today. Before we get started, we'll go over some dotting basics, and the first thing that I want to talk about is what is a mandala. A mandala is just a pattern. A lot of people call it sacred geometry. A mandala is a sequence of patterns that organize around a single center point. So a mandala kind of expands outward. They're really fun to make. They're a symbol that's used all around the world in different cultures, in different spiritual practices. They're used sometimes in meditation, but at the very core, mandalas are just beautiful. They're fun to make, and I'm excited to create one with you. Let's talk a little bit about the tools that we use for dot mandalas. The first being the set of tools. You can get a set of tools on the internet fairly inexpensively. I use the Craftsmart set from Michaels. It comes with, it comes with 6 pieces, and today we're just using 5 of those 6. But the most important part, you can use tools from any manufacturer. There are some that are in a lot more sizes, a lot more variety, but this set of tools I use for almost everything. The important part is that you know the sizing of your tools. So while our colors might not be the same, while the material of the tool might not be the same, you just need to know the sizes. And so today, this tool set here, my purple rod is 6 millimeters, my blue rod is 8 millimeters, my pink rod is 10 millimeters, my yellow rod is 12 millimeters, and then I'll be using the green stylus. It's got 2 ends. This is 3 millimeters, and this is 2.5 millimeters. So that's what I'm using today. The fun thing about making these designs is you can add a little variation. So if you don't have the exact same tools, just choose the next closest in size, and that's absolutely okay. There are a lot of really fun tool sets that you can get on Amazon, on Etsy, that will allow you to create some really fun designs. Then we're going to talk about paint. So paint is a really important part of dotting, and having the right consistency is really important. My favorite paint to use is DecoArt Americana. I found its perfect consistency right out of the tube. You can see on this graphic here the difference between what we're looking for, but I like to compare the thickness to melted ice cream or a thin milkshake. That's kind of the consistency that we're going for. Now you can use any kind of acrylic paint. So for example, if you have the thicker paint in the tubes, you can use this, but you'll need to thin it down with a matte fluid medium or with a tinge of water. Sometimes water can break down the paint, so it's always a good idea just to get the paint that works right out of the bottle, like the DecoArt brand. But that's a personal preference. Another really great brand that you can use great out of the bottle is the Liquitex Fluid. It's a little more expensive, but it does have a nice finish. And then on the higher end, Golden also has a fluid. But certainly I think the DecoArt paint is a great option. We will not be using these today, but another tool that is handy to have when you're making mandalas are stencils. So stencils come in a variety of materials. I have some here that's just cut on plastic. This is a silicone stencil, which is really handy because it can go on odd shaped items. Stencils come in a variety of patterns. I most frequently use the 16-arm stencils. Those are my favorite. They come in 6-arm stencils, 12-arm stencils. You can get a variety. Some will be swirled. There's all kinds of options. So you can look around if you really enjoy dotting. These are a great tool to have. We don't need that today. A marking tool is also important, and if you're just starting out and not sure if this is a hobby that you're going to continue, you can really just use chalk. When you have chalk, you can mark your lines, and then when you're finished with your design, let everything dry, and you can just wipe that chalk right away like it was never there. 2 other options that I like using. This one here is my favorite. It's called a Stabilo All pencil. It's a water-soluble pencil, which means you can use water to clean it up. So this is a great option. Marking pencils, these are sewing pencils, and so people use these to mark on clothing as they're sewing, and then this washes out with water. So again, this is a good option. It works the same as this pencil. Watercolor pencils are also a great option, but really all you need is a piece of chalk that can easily be erased. So that's how we're going to make our lines. And then it's a good idea to have something to put your paint in. So I recommended one of these. These are called weld palettes. They're fairly inexpensive. You can get them at any art or craft store, but also places like Dollar Tree have them as well. And there's a little cup that you can put the paint in, and that's helpful because you want to dip nice and deep into the paint. There are also some fancier tools that you can get for your dotting paint. This one is from Devon Dotting here. I make a lot of my molds from this company. But this is a nice 9 weld palette that you can use for your paints as well. All right, I'm going to straighten up my desk just a little bit here, and then I'm going to show you some of the techniques. Alright, so I'm going to set that aside. Let me get out some paint that I can demonstrate with here. Alright, so I'm just going to get a color that we're not using. Alright, when you're using your dotting tools, again, there are 2 types of tools. This is called a rod, and this is called a stylus. Stylus have the metal tips at the ends. Regardless of which tool you're using, when you dip into the paint, you want it to go over the edge of your tool. You want a lot of paint on your tool, and that's so you can make a nice consistent dot every time that you dot. So just to show you what that looks like here, you want a lot of paint on that tool. So definitely you need to go over the ball part of the stylus and put plenty of paint on your tool. Now every time that you dot, you should dip in between. So let me clean this off and I will show you what I mean. All right, so here I've got just a little handmade worksheet here. So every time we dot, we're gonna dip into the paint, make sure it's over the edge. We're gonna dip and dot, dip and dot. When I dot my tool, I want it to be at a 90-degree angle, and I just want to kiss the page. And so I'm gonna put a graphic up on the screen that talks a little bit about the kiss. So when you dot your dot onto your surface, you barely want to touch the surface. You want to let the paint dip down, and you're squishing the paint, but you're not stamping the tool. You don't want to push really hard and stamp the tool directly onto the surface. You want to just give it a little kiss, and that will help you make the perfect dot. So I mentioned every time we make a dot, we're going to dip and dot, and that keeps our sizes the same. Okay, now there is something called walking the dots, and we do that when we want our dots to intentionally get smaller. So what we do for that is we dip once, and then we can make the dots without re-dipping, and they will progressively get smaller. That's called walking the dots, okay? And so we dip first, and then we don't re-dip. So you can see if you don't re-dip every time, they get smaller, which can be used to our benefit if that's part of the design. But when we make dots that we want to be the same size, we have to dip and dot each and every time. When we walk the dots, you can walk the dots in a straight line, but you can also walk the dots in a curved line, which is something that we do in our design. And it works the exact same way. You dip once, and then you just curve the line instead of going straight. So if you want to pause the video here and practice that, it's super easy to do, and as soon as you get the hang of it, it's pretty easy going. Before we move on, I want to put a graphic on the screen that shows some of the common errors with painting. So you can see here at the top, you want your dots to be smooth and round, and the paint should kind of just flow into a nice even circle. Sometimes if you don't have enough paint on your tool, you won't get that nice even circle. And so you want to make sure each and every time that you have plenty of paint on your dotting tool, enough paint that you can kind of give it that kiss, give it that little smush, and that'll keep a nice even dot. If you get a peak or a Hershey Kiss, that means your paint is too thick and you need to thin it. So different brands and different lines of acrylic paint come in different thicknesses. There's fluid paints, there is medium bodied paint, there's heavy bodied paint, but we're really looking for the consistency of craft paint or like a milkshake. So make sure your paint is not too thick. If you're getting mountains, Hershey Kisses, that's too thick and you want to thin it. And then the last thing I want to mention is on the bottom of the graphic here, if you push down on your tool, if you're stamping your tool, it's going to make kind of just a weird ripple, unevenness. You're going to get just not a very nice dot. And then that means there's there's too much pressure, you're pushing down too hard on your tool, remember to kiss the surface. And I'll show you what that looks like here on my paper. So if you don't have enough paint, you're not able to properly make that kiss. And so you can see here, it's just not a very nice dot, okay? Similarly, if you've got plenty of paint, but you stamp your tool, it's gonna do something similar. It's just not gonna be even. So you wanna make sure that you've got plenty of paint on there and you just barely give that a kiss and a smush, and it'll make a nice, even round dot. So if you need to, you can stop and practice that a little bit. The design that we're doing actually practices a lot of these skills throughout the design. That's why this is a great beginner design. All right, the next technique we're gonna do is called a swipe or a swoop or a swish, depending on what you wanna call it. So for that, we're gonna use the stylus tool. We dip in the stylus tool, again, up over the edge, and we're gonna hold it just like a pencil. And when you're writing with a pencil or a pen, you don't change the pressure that you're using. So what we're going to do is use it just like a pen or a pencil. I'm going to tap it onto my page. I'm not going to vary the pressure, and I'm just going to pull. And that makes a swipe. So you put it on your page and you pull, and it will naturally run out of paint by itself. And that's how you make a swipe. You don't want to vary the pressure. You just pull until it stops making a mark. You can make swipes straight, or you can make them curved, just like we did over here. So you dip with each swipe that you make, apply pressure, keep even pressure until the paint runs out. And then the last technique I want to show you is called a top dot. So when you're making dots, people will layer up the dots, and sometimes some designs will have 3 or even 4 layers. And so when you make top dots, you want your bottom dot to be fairly dry. It needs to have at least a film over it so that it's not bleeding into the top layer. And then you can dip and dot right on top. And the only thing that you really have to keep in mind when you're doing top dots is that as you work your way up, the dots need to get smaller. So for example, on this size, I used my purple for the bottom layer, and then the top dot, I can use a smaller tool to make a dot on top. And so that's kind of the basics that you're going to need to know for this pattern here. So if you want to pause, you can practice, or we can just go right into the design. Before you get started, you want to gather up your tools and your paint colors, have everything ready. The other thing that is handy to have and that you'll need is a brush to paint the background color, and then some paper towels. Wet paper towels work best, or if you've got baby wipes, those are even better. So gather those up and let's get started. All right, so you can see here I've got my paint set out. The colors that I have are magenta, I have a white pearl, yellow, light, medium, and dark purple. And the first thing we're going to do is take our brush and we're going to paint our background color, which I did with the light purple. Next, we need to make some lines to help guide us in our design. So I'm going to make a line from corner to corner with some chalk. That's going to help us find our center. You can use a ruler, but you can also just use a straight edge. Anything with a straight edge. And you'll see that helps us find the center. And then I'm going to make my center points, my north and south, right down the middle. And then my left and right, or my east and west, right down the middle and that'll give us 8 lines. That will help give us a grid for our mandala. Then we're going to get our tools out, and the first tool that I'm going to use is my blue rod, which is 8 millimeters, and I'm going to dip it in the yellow paint. Make sure again that you get the paint over the edge of the tool, and we're going to create our center dot. Now on our surface, while we're creating, we can either make our dots on the lines or in the spaces. So for the first set, we are going to make dots in the spaces. I'm going to use the green stylus on the large end and my pink paint, and I'm going to place one dot next to the yellow dot in each space. So not on the line, but in between each of the lines. And I'm going to go all the way around the circle, and we're going to have 8 dots. Next, we're going to switch to the small side of the stylus, and I'm going to use the pink paint, and we're going to make a small swoop or a line on each of the lines. So we'll end up with 8 of those. If you need to practice on a piece of paper first, go ahead and do that. But we're going to make one tiny little swipe on each of the 8 lines. Next, we're going to use the purple rod and our dark purple paint, and we're going to add 1 dot on every line. I'm going to start with my north and south lines. Then I'm going to do my east and west lines. Those help me keep everything nice and even. And then I'll do the ones in between for a total of 8. Next, we're going to use our green stylus on the small end, and we are going to walk some dots around these purple circles. I'm going to start with my center dot and then walk to the right, re-dip. I'm going to dip my center dot again and then walk to the left. By dipping the center dot twice, it makes that center dot a little larger. And then I'm going to repeat this process all the way around. Dipping when I walk the dots to the right, and then re-dipping when I walk the dots to the left. And then we're going to repeat this all the way around 8 times. Then I'm going to switch to the large end of the green stylus and some yellow paint. We're going to walk the dots again, but I'm going to start with my center dot. I'm going to add one yellow center dot with the large end of the green stylus all the way around. So 8 at each one at each point. Then what I'm going to do is switch to the small side of the green stylus, and I'm going to walk the dots on each side. And that creates a petal, and we're going to go around each of those petals, repeat the process 8 times. Next, we're going to use the green stylus on the small end and the pink paint or the magenta paint, and we're going to swipe once to the right on every petal, following the shape of that petal, and then once on the left of every petal. So instead of walking the dots for this step, we're making a swipe. Remember, when you make your swipes, you do not adjust the pressure. You just let the paint run out by itself. If you need to while you're working, you can always use a really fine tip. I like to use a mechanical pencil. You can also use a needle point or a pin point and fix any of those swipes. Next, we're going to repeat the exact same process. Again, using the small end of the green stylus, I'm going to use my medium purple paint, and I'm going to add one more set of swipes. Once to the right and then once to the left, all the way around, adding another layer to those petals. Next, I'm going to grab my blue rod, which is 8mm. I'm going to use my pearl white, and I'm going to place one circle in between each of these petals. I don't want this to touch, so make sure you leave enough room. We're going to go all the way around, and we're going to add 8 of those. Make sure you hold your tool directly up and down at 90 degrees. Make sure you have plenty of paint. Then we are going to continue using the same tool, 8mm, and the white paint, and we're going to add 1 dot at the end of each petal. Leave a little room. We don't want these to look like they're in the same row. And then we're going to add 8 of those on the line next to each petal. Next, we're going to walk the dots. We're going to use the green stylus on the large end and the pink paint, and we are going to add a center dot to the white dots that are on the line. So we're going to do 8 of those all the way around. So I'm using the large end of my green stylus, pink paint, and I'm going to do 8 dots. Once we have those 8 dots, I'm going to wipe the end off. I'm going to switch to the small end, and then we're going to walk the dots on each side, surrounding that white dot. We're going to do that on both sides of every dot, and that'll give us 8 all the way around. Then I'm going to switch to the large end of the green stylus. We're going to do the same thing, except this time I'm going to give it a little wiggle for that center dot just to make it slightly larger. I'm going to use my dark purple paint. I'm going to make a center circle all the way around. So 1 dot in the center. And then I'm going to continue using the large end of the stylus, and I'm going to walk the dots on each side. So we're going to go all the way around and create 8 petals. Then we're going to repeat this process one more time with the yellow paint. So I'm going to use my large end of the stylus, create my center dots. Again, I'm going to wiggle so the center dots are just slightly larger. We're going to create center dots all the way around. And then I'm going to go back and walk the dots on each side to finish each of these 8 petals. Next, I'm going to use my purple rod. That's the 6mm tool, and the pink paint. And what we're going to do is we're going to add 1 dot in between each of these petals. And so it's okay if your placement is slightly different from mine, as long as you try to place it in the same place all the way around. These will not be on lines, these are in the space. Remember to use plenty of paint, dot at a 90-degree angle, and we're going to create 8 of these dots. Next, I'm going to grab my green stylus, the large end, and I'm going to use the medium purple. I'm going to create a center dot next to each one of these pink dots. I'm going to give it a little wiggle so my center dot is slightly larger. And then we're going to walk the dots around each side of the pink circle surrounding it. Next, we're going to do some swipes. So again, if you need to practice this, you can practice on a piece of paper, but I'm going to use the green stylus, the small end, and I'm going to swipe once to the right of each of these new petals that we've created, and then I'm going to come back and swipe once to the left. I'm using white paint, my green stylus on the small end, and I'm swiping the line. Then I'm going to repeat this same process with the pink or magenta. So green stylus, small end, magenta paint. I'm going to swipe a line once to the left and once to the right on every petal. Then I'm going to grab my blue stylus and the dark purple paint. The blue stylus is the 8mm tool, and I'm going to add one large dot at the end of these petals. Now I noticed once I started dotting, I overlapped my swipes a little bit. That got a little messy, so I'm going to go back and kind of fix that with the smaller tool. But we're going to add 8 of these circles. If you overlap, you can use a smaller tool to kind of fix the shape a little bit like I did, or you can just leave more space and not have the overlap. But I'm just going to repair that a little bit with a smaller tool. Now you're going to see me doing a little touch up here. I've got some paint splatters, so I'm just using some of my background color to touch up a little bit of that splatter. Next, I'm going to add a top dot using my green stylus, the large end, and my dark purple paint, and I'm going to add a dot right in the center. Now that ends the design, and what you can do from this point is you can add more top dots if you want to. You can fill in some more space if you want to, but this is your opportunity to make it your own. And I would love to see your variation. You can always tag me on social media at Tara Lynn Pugh Artist, or you can join my free group, which is Dot Mandala Creators USA. And share in there. You can share any of your dot mandala creations. I also have a membership called the Kaleidoscope Mandala Club. You can look that up on Facebook, or you can look it up on the internet. We are enrolling in October, so if you're interested, check that out. And I want to thank you so much for joining today. I can't wait to see what you create, and I hope to make another beautiful mandala with you soon.